Hi, and welcome back to Investment Banking University. This is our investment banking course, and we are on the second side of the perpetuity, the sell side. And we're actually going into the role of the investment banker. And within this role, there is going to be coverage. So we have an investment banking coverage methodology here. So it's crucial for investment bankers to understand the M&A marketplace, and in the middle market in particular, the industries that they cover. So first, the investment banker is going to choose what size of companies he or she is going to cover. For example, public companies, middle market, lower middle market, or even smaller than that. From there, the investment banker chooses an initial coverage vertical and sub-verticals within that. So we're going to think about how we break down a taxonomy of a given industry into a reasoned framework. With ALTQUEST Group, the company that I built, our initial coverage groups were the following. Number 1, manufacturing. Number 2, software. 3, business services. And then 4th, healthcare. After choosing your coverage, the investment banker is then going to build an index of each of the verticals and sub-verticals made up with the public companies within that industry. The index and the changes in the index are going to provide a measuring stick within which to evaluate targets against. It's important for the investment banker to have a strong understanding of multiples within the marketplace in general, and then his or her subsector and sector. In general, in the middle market, as we've already discussed, we typically see about 7 times to 7.5 times EBITDA for companies that have larger than 25 million in total enterprise value. As we get smaller than 25 million in total enterprise value, we typically see 5 times to about 5.5 times in EBITDA. For those just getting started in investment banking, it's preferable to start in the lower middle market, and then you can work your way up, or you can start in the middle market depending on what sort of background you have. So you're going to start building relationships with financial and strategic buyers as well as potential targets. This means building your Rolodex, obtain the investment mandates from the strategic and financial buyers, and establish a fee agreement for the buy-side deals. And this is going to be the layman scale that they're going to use. The investment banker will often focus on a product group and or an industry, for example, industrials, healthcare, technology, and then the product group, of course, is M&A, which is the core product of investment banking. Proper coverage comes in the form of maintaining a coverage index for a sector as well as subsectors, which are broken down in the following manner. And this is typically how an industry report is going to be structured. They're going to talk about the industry macroeconomics in terms of industry spending, subsector spending, and then they're going to look at stock market performance of the industry. We're going to take a look at the public subsector financial and valuation performance. So we're going to actually break that down, the industry, into subsectors. And we're going to take a look at the financial performance, we're going to take a look at market multiples, and then break it down into product categories and take a look at multiples and financial performance within that. After we take a look at the financial and valuation performance, we're going to take a look at the precedent transactions within that given industry, and that's going to be known as the M&A market update within that industry. So we're going to be looking at industry level M&A deal volume and spending, exit multiples, and then we're going to break it into the subsectors. And then finally, we're going to take a look at subsector industry key metrics in the appendix, as well as key metrics by product category. And this is an infographic just depicting the investment banking coverage methodology that we've created at Investment Banking University. And of course, it begins with choosing what size of companies you're going to be covering. It goes then into building an index for the vertical and sub-verticals made up of public comps, and then using the index that we have created to advise on strategic alternatives, matching mandates from strategic and financial buyers with given targets. So after establishing one's coverage and then building an index for the vertical and sub-vertical, as well as establishing these relationships that we talked about with buyers, we can start tracking trends in growth rates, margins, debt to equity, and multiples. The investment banker takes the index and establishes tiers which turn into peer groups, and we evaluate targets against those peer groups. And we're going to be ultimately advising targets on strategic alternatives relative to the peers. So from there, we're going to talk a little bit deeper about index building and benchmarking within an index. So regarding a vertical index and sub-vertical indices, the investment banker, like we talked about, ultimately is tracking trends in growth rates, margins, and multiples. And the investment banker takes the index and establishes tiers, which turn into peer groups. And this is why we pull comps, build a nice index, and benchmark against these comps. The indexing and benchmarking that is done for a target company is going to serve as the basis for advising on strategic alternatives. One should build indices for a vertical and then sub-verticals. And then we're going to actually take a look at building an index at a product level as well. We're going to talk about that later on in the course. So this is at a high level some of the work that we've done building an index for ALTQUEST Group's software index. And as you can see along the left-hand side, we have the public company names. It goes into total enterprise value, revenue, EBITDA, net income, EBITDA margin, net income margin, cash, current ratio, debt to equity ratio, total enterprise value to revenue, and total enterprise value to EBITDA. In terms of going even further and breaking it into a taxonomy of these subverticals, we're actually looking at right here the ALTQUEST Group SaaS index, or software as a service index. And we have the company, going from left to right, we have the company, total enterprise value, revenue, EBITDA, net income, EBITDA margin, net income margin, cash, current ratio, debt to equity ratio, total enterprise value to revenue, and total enterprise value to EBITDA. We have the same thing for internet. And now we're going to talk about financial data sources that we're going to be using to actually build the index and to track changes in the index. So if you are at a larger investment bank, you are going to have various paid data sources at your disposal. These include Bloomberg, number 1, Capital IQ, number 2, and FactSet, number 3. For those that are not at a larger bank, one is going to have to use free sources of financial data, including Yahoo Finance and Google Finance. Yahoo Finance and Google Finance get their EBITDA numbers actually from Capital IQ, and their analyst EPS consensus estimates from there as well. So that's going to be valuable data. Investment banks typically do not want you to use EBITDA from Capital IQ, Bloomberg, FactSet, and would prefer that you spread the comps individually to get to EBITDA. We are ultimately using the financial data sources to build and maintain our various indices associated with our coverage group, as we talked about. And so we're taking these indices that we maintain and track changes in, and we're actually going to be pulling information from there and sharing those with particular targets to give them information to advise them on strategic alternatives. That information is typically put in deliverables such as an industry sector newsletter or industry sector report, and that's what we're going to be talking about right now. When maintaining coverage of an industry or sector, one prepares a newsletter to then be sent to prospective sell-side clients in the industry or sector. In fact, investment bankers use the index information to create this newsletter. The newsletter is typically about 2 to 6 pages. And for example, our ALTQUEST Group software industry coverage has produced the following newsletter, which is sent to potential targets. And as you can see here, it has a nice presentation on the front. And then we go into, as we talked about before, the software industry macroeconomics, and then we go into the actual breakdown of subverticals, and we take a look at the mean metrics within those. So we've broken it down between traditional software, software as a service, and then finally internet, and then we have the contact information. So this gets sent out to prospective clients in the software industry. In terms of a larger scale report that one produces as an investment banker, we are actually going to be making an industry or sector report. So when maintaining coverage of an industry or sector, one prepares a report to be sent to prospective sell-side clients in the industry or sector. Investment bankers use the index information to create this report. And this goes into more depth than the newsletter. And the report is typically about 15 to 20 pages. And for example, our ALTQUEST Group software industry coverage has produced this report. And we're just going to take a look at it at a high level. It has a nice presentation. We go into who is ALTQUEST Group, the software industry macroeconomics, public traditional software, financial, and valuation performance. And then we break it down into our sub-verticals that we focus on, namely software as a service and internet. So we're taking a look at, in our report, overview of ALTQUEST Group. ALTQUEST Group is a boutique investment bank that exists to aid corporate and financial sponsors to find and acquire middle market targets in software, manufacturing, healthcare, and business services. Deal size coverage is from about 5 million to 100 million in total enterprise value, and then buy side engagements can go north of 1 billion. Our M&A team has extensive sector expertise and execution experience, and we focus on middle market companies. For the software industry macroeconomics, we talk about that. We go into the mean metrics for software as a service, as you can see here, and this is based upon our index that we maintain. We go into the traditional software index, etc. And then we finally go into internet. So in summation, we have to build relationships with our coverage in terms of both potential sellers, meaning targets, and potential buyers. And so we're going to have to ultimately build a Rolodex. And so as an investment banker, it's important to establish relationships with the strategics in your coverage group, as well as relationships with targets and potential buyers. So after building the index containing several relevant strategics, one should go to a platform where you can actually pull the information to get email addresses, etc., from CEOs, CFOs, and corporate M&A departments, and then ultimately reach out to those individuals and build relationships with them. So an example of a vertical-specific Rolodex would be the following that we used with ALTQUEST. And as you can see here, we've actually had to go in and pull information associated with company name, the executive level or executive last name, first name, and then ultimately the phone number and the email. And then that's how we reach out to those individuals. And that's obviously done in Excel. So that's it for this video. In the next video, we're actually going to get into a proprietary M&A origination methodology.